The baby had been staring at the wall for 4 minutes. Nobody thought that was the problem. The Bernese Mountain Dog did. It started on a Wednesday in March, the kind of ordinary morning that doesn't signal anything until it's over. Elise Fontaine was at the kitchen counter when her 9-month-old daughter Simone went quiet in the living room. Not the quiet of sleep, the wrong quiet, the quiet that sits in a house differently than any other silence. Bear was a 3-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog, 98 pounds, black and white, and rust, with the unhurried temperament of a dog who had decided early that the world did not require emergency responses. He had lived through Simone's arrival with the calm of a dog who had been prepared. He had been the first animal she had ever touched. He had been, from the beginning, the one fixed point in a room full of unpredictable infant variables, which was why what happened at 9:17 that Wednesday morning stopped Elise in the middle of pouring her coffee. Bear crossed the living room from his place by the window in a way she had never seen him move, not running. Something between running and certainty. He planted himself in front of Simone where she sat propped against the floor pillow and lowered his enormous head until his muzzle was level with her face. Then he made a sound. Not a bark. A low, sustained vocalization she had no word for, a sound that carried. Simone was staring, eyes open, glassy, focused on nothing. Not tracking, not blinking in the rhythm that babies blink. Her hands were flat on the pillow, not grasping, not fidgeting, not doing the constant small busy work of an awake and engaged 9-month-old. Elise set down the coffee. She had been a speech-language pathologist for 7 years, with a specialization in early childhood developmental assessment. She knew the difference between a baby who was simply entranced and a baby who had gone somewhere else. She crossed the living room in 6 steps and crouched in front of Simone. The baby's eyes did not move to her face when she entered her visual field. This was the moment Elise Fontaine stopped being a professional with a framework and became a mother with a phone in her hand calling 911. The paramedics who arrived 6 minutes later assessed Simone quickly. One of them, a woman named Petra, asked Elise how long the episode had lasted. About 4 minutes, Elise said. Maybe 5. Petra asked if there had been any unusual sounds from the baby before it started. Elise tried to remember and said no. Then Petra asked, "What made you call right now instead of waiting?" Elise said, "The dog." The pediatric neurologist at the Children's Hospital was Dr. Tamsin Okafor. She reviewed the EEG that afternoon, sat with the results for a moment, then came out to where Elise and her husband Felix were waiting. The EEG showed activity consistent with absence seizures. Short, silent neurological events in which the brain's electrical system briefly interrupts, and the child appears to stare, goes unreachable, and then returns with no memory of the episode. In infants this young, absence seizures produce almost no external symptoms beyond the staring. No shaking, no fall, no cry. A tired parent, a distracting environment, a few seconds of looking away, and they're missed entirely. Some children have dozens per day for months before anyone notices. Elise looked at Felix and then looked at the door of the room they were sitting in. She said, "How would I have known?" Dr. Okafor said, "Most families don't. Not this early. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place." Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The research on canine detection of seizure activity describes multiple mechanisms: olfactory, behavioral, electromagnetic sensitivity. What dogs consistently respond to during absence seizures is the stillness, not random stillness, the specific and particular stillness of a brain that has paused, the lack of micro-movement, the altered breath pattern, the biochemical shift present in the air around a person whose neurological activity has interrupted. Bear had not been trained for any of this. He had been trained to sit, to stay, to come, to leave it. The rest he had figured out himself through 9 months of proximity to a baby whose chemistry he had memorized in the way dogs memorize the people they have decided to watch. The vocalization Elise couldn't name was what Dr. Okafor, when she heard it described, called an alert behavior. Not panic, urgency with a purpose. The specific sound of an animal that has something to tell you and has chosen sound because every other option has already failed. Simone was started on a low-dose medication protocol at 11 months old. Her episodes decreased by 90% in the first 6 weeks. By 14 months, the EEG showed continued improvement. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Bear was back in his place by the window when they brought Simone home. He crossed to her when Felix set her carrier on the floor and lowered his head toward her in the careful, deliberate way he always had. Simone looked up at him with the enormous, unfocused attention of an infant who finds one face more interesting than all the others. She reached up and grabbed a handful of his ear. He stayed perfectly still. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If these stories matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The next story involves a dog who began sleeping outside a bedroom door for 3 weeks before anyone understood why. Bear lay down beside Simone's playmat and exhaled once, long and low, the sound of a large animal settling in for a watch it had no intention of ending.